So here's a little funny story to kick off this video. One of my teachers at school, he's a Doctor Who fan, and over the past couple of weeks we've been talking about the recent episodes with the 60th anniversary, what we think of them and whatnot. And this Monday just gone after Wobbly Yonder, he came up to me at break time and he said, "Dan, your arms are too long." Absolute legend right there. I'm Dan, on the Who Review. Let's talk about Wobbly Yonder. So, Wobbly Yonder, the second of the trilogy of specials for Doctor Who's 60th anniversary, and it was the one going in that we knew the least about, and it was very minimal marketing for this one. People thought there was some kind of secret to be kept, like a past Doctor cameo, or past companions, or past monsters. All kinds of theories about it about, and I think even Russell T Davies himself admitted maybe that was a bit of a bad move in hindsight. I can kind of understand the minimal marketing though, to an extent. I mean, the levels of secrecy maybe did overhype it a bit, admittedly, but with how weird this episode can get with the whole fake Doctor Donna know things, how would you market this episode? I mean, I definitely agree with keeping parts of this one a surprise, because I don't really know how you would market it. It was an interesting one, at least, going in, and going out I had no idea what to make of it really, and this is why I'm glad I've rewatched it and I can share with you my thoughts on the Who review, because this episode has definitely gotten better, unlike the Star Beast, which did get weaker as I thought about it. This one, having rewatched it and kind of understanding the whole episode better, I really love it, so let's get into it. So the plot of this one is relatively simple when you explain it. The Doctor and Donna, after the event end of the Star Beast, when Donna spills a coffee on the console, TARDIS goes AWOL and they land on this spaceship at the edge of the universe. The TARDIS, as they're trying to repair it, disappears because of an emergency protocol thing with the sonic screwdriver, so the Doctor and Donna have to kind of rely on their wits to find out what's going on, where are they on the spaceship, what is this spaceship, who's the robot, and they soon discover they're not alone, they've got themselves as company, or the know things versions of themselves. So I want to get my critiques of the episode first out of the way, because I think my main critique is the beginning of the episode with the cold open with Isaac Newton and the Doctor and Donna crashing into the apple tree, and that's probably going to take the cake as the most pointless pre-credit scene ever. It doesn't really add anything to the story overall, and I think what it does, it really sets the wrong tone for the episode. You expect with that pre-credit scene to be a kind of globe-hopping or universe-hopping, fast-paced adventure, and then when you get to the ship, which is more of a bottled episode, contained in that spaceship, it sets the wrong tone, and that's why I feel like on first viewing, the first 20-so minutes of the episode I found quite slow and unusually slow, and I think it sets the wrong tone and doesn't really add anything to the story overall, so it really, I wasn't a fan of that. I know a lot of people have mentioned this, but the CGI wasn't the best in this episode. Now, I will get onto elements where the weird CGI does enhance the episode, but I'll get onto that later. But I think some of the ones like the over-ambition, I think maybe was stretched a bit with the corridor, the vastness of the corridor. It was definitely CGI, not too big of an issue, but it was definitely CGI. And the little hover car thing that they were driving on, yeah, that was a bit weak. And these were things that I don't think, the weirdness there was an excuse for. Unlike the elements which I'll talk about after with the no things, and we'll talk about that. But that's overall my only few nitpicks and critiques for the episode. Overall, I really loved it. In premise, I think the episode had a bit of a throwback feel, kind of classic Who, landing on a spaceship in a little room as well, which I thought was it felt very classic Who, that did. They explore the spaceship and they find out what's going on. A nice slow burn mystery that on a repeat viewing I felt was great and really effective. But then as the plot thickens and we understand what the threat is with the know things, which, the doppelganger Doctor and Donna, and we understand the stakes, I think it becomes very experimental and, one of those kind of weirder episodes. A lot of people compare it to things like Midnight, and I can definitely see that, the kind of psychological, weird, unknown horror, the fear of the unknown. I think that's definitely done really well through the music, the sound design of some of the silent moments, when they're in the edge of the universe. I think it's done really well, and it didn't necessarily scare me, but it had that uneasy atmosphere, that fear of the unknown. I don't really think I've properly felt that for a while in a Doctor Who story. I think the direction was really strong. It's directed by Tom Kingsley, who I've seen some of his work for the BBC sitcom Ghosts, which I've talked about before on the channel, and love that sitcom. But obviously, with that sitcom, it's got an element of fantasy with the ghosts, and I think this is very much that, but on steroids, essentially. The kind of uneasy, fantastical atmosphere of this spaceship, I think, is really well done. I think some of the early POV shots of looking at the Doctor and Donna through the nooks and crannies of the spaceship, I think, is really effective. Or what about the stains on like the ventilation shaft in that small room? I think these little directorial flourishes, I think they really add that sense of mystery and unease that you don't. And then when looking back in retrospect, the know things don't really have a form that we really know. I think it adds that sense of fear of the unknown. I think it's really well directed. But I do think the spaceship sets as well are really strong. I like the cockpit set with the light blue lights, and then you've got the orangey hues of that one room, and then the other room with like the water tank room with the vibrant blues. I think these good colour contrasts, I think, are really effective and just establish strong geography and establish strong visual contrasts, and we can, just like, see where we are in relation to each other. Okay, let's get on to the real meat and potatoes of this story, the performances. It's mainly a two-hander between David Tennant and Catherine Tate as both the Doctor and Donna and the Know Things versions of them. And I think they were both phenomenal. It's some of their best work. And rewatching the episode, I think the nuances within their performances, especially as the Know Things, I think is really clever. I think if we just like talk about the raw emotions of the real Doctor and Donna, the bit where the Doctor's recoiling after the flux and he's just raging, I think having to confront that, I think is really great. And Russell, paying homage to Flux and the Timeless Children, actually doing it justice and actually making it feel important and like it was worth something more than Chibnall really did, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think Tennant sold it, he really did, and it felt justified to be included. And the part towards the end where Donna, the real Donna, is almost left behind for dead and she's almost seeing her demise, I think it's some of Catherine Tate's best actors, and she sells that scene so well. But then the performances of the Know Thing creatures, I think there's certain scenes I think are really good to look at. So the first scene, obviously you've got the real Donna in the orange hue room and then the real Doctor in the water tanky room. When the Know Thing versions of both of them enter, I think there's really great subtle clues that you can pick up on, like their body language and their facial expressions. They're a bit stiffer, and their delivery of lines, it's slightly less monotone, and they don't really react or engage with the conversations that the real Doctor and Donna definitely would have engaged with more. It's not overdone from Tennant and Tate, and that's brilliant. The subtlety of it is really clever. We really have to look for it, and I think it's really clever. It's a testament to them as actors. They are phenomenal actors, but it's really, really clever and really satisfying on a rewatch. And there was a kind of uncanny valley aspect to them through the performances, not just through the performances though, with the visuals. I think the CGI. I mentioned the dodgy CGI, but here we like the elongated limbs, and when Donna's arm is sort of elongated and it's sort of cut off by a wall, I think it's really creepy. But there's a slight twinge of like comic humour to it all. It's a bit kind of darkly comic, but it is quite creepy and quite gnarly because it is that kind of uncanniness. They look like the Doctor and Donna, but they're not. It's off, and it's off-putting, I think, and it's not overt horror, and I think that's what's effective. It's not in your face, it's not overt, but it's still effective, and I think that's really clever. I think the second confrontation scene is really clever in conveying these whole mistrust angle, and I think it's just a really genuinely clever scene. Obviously, you've got the real Doctor and fake Donna, real Donna, fake Doctor. I think it's really clever. And something quite clever I noticed is that Tennant as the Know Thing Doctor weirdly became more 10th Doctor-like as the story went on. He was kind of more zany, like when he did the time trick, he took it off. It felt very zany 10th Doctor, or when you've got the four of them in the room, he's very exaggerated, like very fast, yes. And then the real 14, he's sort of like, he's a bit slower and not as quick. And I kind of saw that as almost a extension of what I said in my initial reaction, that the Know Things almost represent the whole thing of, if you cling on to the past, if you wallow in the past and don't evolve, you become a malformed, off, just weirdly off version of yourself. You're almost a parody of your former self, which the Know Thing kind of becomes like a parody of the 10th Doctor, the kind of zany, fast-paced 10th Doctor. And I thought, rewatching that and noticing those details, that was quite clever. And then the real 14, he has to deal with the reality of the things. He has to deal with the Flux and Timeless Children, and I do genuinely think that's really clever, and it's what I wanted from the 60th. And it wasn't the most overt thing ever, but it's definitely there now that I've picked up on these little details. And overall, I just generally love this episode on a rewatch. I really admire the creativity, and that's something I felt even when I first watched it, even though I didn't fully understand it. the creativity and the ambition I really did admire. You know, the dare to do something this kind of out there, I really appreciate it. I think it's got great build-up, great mystery, great use of horror, great subtext, great music, great production values for the most part, phenomenal performances, some of David Tennant and Catherine Tate's best work in the show, and of course, at the end, we get Bernard Cribbins' wolf one final time, which was just, I don't know a soul who didn't love that scene. I don't know anybody who would dislike it. So I'm going to give this out now a 9 out of 10. It's gone from an 8 to a 9, which I'm very happy for. I knew this would go up, and I'm really glad that I really did feel the improvement on a rewatch. Now, in terms of the reception of this story, in terms of viewing figures, the overnight figures we've got for this one have dropped slightly from the Star Beast. It's now on 4.83 million overnight viewers for Yonder. It's a drop of about 250,000, I think. It's about 250,000. It might sound drastic when I say it like that, but trust me, 4.83 million overnight, that's quite strong. It obviously doesn't include catch-up, iPlayer, Disney+, just the people who watched it on BBC One on broadcast. I think that's a respectable figure. And if that's not good news enough, well, the Star Beast 7-day consolidated figures from iPlayer and catch-up over the 7 days was like 7.6 million views, which is a really strong number. And it's the strongest overnights that Doctor Who's got since the midway through Series 11, like half a decade ago now. So Doctor Who's doing pretty good. And you've got to remember, TV habits, they've changed. They have. I mean, people saying, oh, you know, it's not like it was like back in 2008 when it was getting 10 million. Shows barely break 10 million nowadays. It's just people's viewing habits have changed. Like, they just have. And 7.6 million over 7 days for a scripted show that isn't a reality show, I think that's actually really strong going. So yeah. Speaking of the reception that this story got, let's talk about what you guys said in the comments of my Wobbly Under reaction. So Bomb the Chaos said, I thought it was a vast improvement over last week's stinker. My rating criteria are controlled by a tighter algorithm than what most people would use. Thus, your 8 tends to be the equivalent to my 6. So does that mean my 9 is your 7? I'm only joking. But, you know, I'm glad that you enjoyed it over the Star Beast. And that similar sentiment is shared by Dat Boy, who said this was so much better than last week's episode. A friend remembers says the first 15 minutes build the tension wonderfully, building up to that pairing up scene where the story actually kicks off. I agree with that, definitely. Once it went, the pace never let up, so I didn't mind the slow lead-in. The body horror was both unnerving and family-friendly, which is an amazing combination. That's a very strong point, actually, you've mentioned there. Had a blast watching this, probably most effective, tense subject matter horror felt a Doctor Who episode has managed to pull off since Listen and then Midnight before that. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know when the last time we had a properly creepy episode. I mean, there's been a few. I guess Well Up in Time, probably for me. J Production says this is very much an episode where I can't entirely process it now. However, I know for a fact that it will get better for me more and more over time. Definitely give it a rewatch. That will benefit your opinions. What I can confidently say now is that I respect this episode a lot. It's unique and creative and like nothing we've seen before. As much as I enjoyed the Star Beast, it was a lot of the same stuff we'd seen. This is a more out there story and it was great to see. Also, I disagree with the bad CGI as I think it was helped make parts of the episode feel more uncanny. With the CGI thing, I get the whole no thing CGI. I get that and I agree with that. I don't agree. I don't think you can really use that excuse for the hover car and the vast corridor. I think that was a bit over ambition. I don't really think you can use the uncanniness as an excuse for that. But no things, definitely. Toby Coleman says, I really don't know what to make of this episode. I don't think I've seen an episode that scared or confused me as much as this in a very long time. The pre-credits was pointless, I agree. And I found myself bored by the first 20 minutes. But as soon as the duplicates came in, I got freaked out very quickly. They reminded me of the gangers from Series 6, but scarier. That's actually an interesting comparison there. Body horror like that freaks me out. I'm not sure I fully understood the plot at all. What was the deal with the salt line other than letting the Toymaker in? The trying not to think scene was really tense, as was the ending bit. Seeing Wolf was so bittersweet, lovely to see him, but sad as I know this is it. I can't wait for the next time. I don't know what to score this, so I'll give it an 8 for now, and that's what I gave it initially. But I think, yeah, give it a rewatch and you might understand it and enjoy it a bit more and appreciate it more. And finally, Stephen Hillier says, I enjoyed this again like last week and was really nice to see Bernard Cribbins. My main problem is that it feels like treading water. I see why RTD wanted to return to Tennant and Tate for publicity purposes, and it's probably paid off, but I'm getting impatient to move on and see what Shooty will make to the role and see if it brings something new to the show. Not long now, I suppose. I would agree with you if you're talking about the Star Beast. I think that's very, very 2008 RTD era Doctor Who. But I think this one is different enough from that original era. It's one of those weird experimental Doctor Who stories, you know, like your Heaven Sense, like your Ghost Lights or what have you. It's one of those weirder ones that doesn't really, it's almost era-less. It doesn't really have an era that I would say it's like. And yeah, I am more excited to see what Shooty brings, because, you know, there's so many possibilities and so much potential, and I'm really excited for the Christmas special with him and for his first series as well. I'm really excited to see what will happen. But you know, I've enjoyed seeing these specials, and that is my review of Wild Blue Yonder. So hope you enjoyed it, and what do you think now that you've maybe let the episode mull over a bit? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to stay tuned for the final of these 60th anniversary specials and the final of my Who reviews with the Giggle. So take care.